Good morning, and welcome to Education Elements panel discussion on when budgets get tight, leading with clarity and compassion. I want to first thank our partner and my co-host here, Uli Narvarate, the Executive Director of the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents. Without the partnership of ALAS, we would not be hosting this event today. And so the shared vision and mission of our two organizations is what brought us together and prompted us to have this conversation. So first, I'm going to share a little bit about Education Elements for those in our audience who aren't familiar. Uli will share a bit about ALAS, and then we're going to dive in and introduce our esteemed panelists that have donated their time to share lessons learned about budget management and bringing your community along during tumultuous times. So with that, I'm Dr. Layla Newland, the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Education Elements. Here at Education Elements, we partner with hundreds of school districts solving complex problems. I like to refer to our team as change architects. Having a national footprint gives us perspective in driving long-lasting, effective, systemic change that ultimately results in the intended outcomes of whatever initiative or program that you've identified. Now, what formed the partnership with ALAS is when we think about what we do, we like to call it real change made local. And it's that localization that really was the piece of our work that helped us realize shared mission with ALAS. And Uli, I'm going to hand it over to you in a minute. But when I talk about real change made local, I'm thinking about the localization gap. I think all too often we have problems of practice and we immediately jump to, well, the district next door is doing something, let's adopt that, right? But we know the context in which we're working in, the students who we're serving, the staff who we're serving and coaching really have unique needs and attributes. And so we need to make sure that we're tailoring everything that we do to what is in front of us and the community in which we're serving. Can I ask you to share a little bit about ALAS and your mission and what's bringing you to the conversation today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. First and foremost, good morning, and thank you for having me, Layla. I mean, it's always a pleasure. This is more than just a partnership. It's a relationship that we've established and built with you guys for a number of years. ALAS is the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, and we've been around, wow, our roots probably go about 50 years, but as an organization, we've been established about 22 years. We've got 18 state affiliates across 25 different states, and we serve about 31 million students out there. And really our purpose is to focus on policy, advocacy, and representation so that our students actually see themselves in the leadership that's there. And you hit the nail right on the head when you talk about basically localizing this. Districts aren't the same anymore. You know, they really are not. Even right next to each other. You can have a lot of different things going on. And although they're made of the same brick and mortar, the constituents, obviously the students are what's different, what gives it different lifeblood. So you can actually have this there, but I think it's super important that you can have two different districts, all in the same community, but facing different issues entirely in there. So our partnership allows us to go ahead and do that and find those systemic challenges that we see and coming up with solutions that we can for our students to help them all grow, because ultimately that's what we're in this for. It's right. We're in this about making it about our students forever. So, yeah.
I think one of the things that I love about the organization and that what I really enjoy being able to participate in is the leadership development that you all provide as we think about how we know we have a leadership gap right now too, right? That the job of the building principal, the job of the superintendent is a challenging one. And we know that the average tenure of those roles continues to decline. And so what I've really grown to appreciate is the leadership development that you all provide. And with that, I think that's what really brought us together to put our heads together on what are the key issues that we're hearing from your membership base, from our client base here at Education Elements. And that's what prompted us to have the conversation that we're about to have around compassionate budget planning. I think it's important to contextualize. So maybe we can talk a little bit about what we're seeing. And I want to hear from you, what you're hearing from your membership base, and maybe some of your worries or innovation that you're really excited about. Um, I think for about a year and a half, everybody's been talking about this looming funding cliff, right? We knew that there was going to come an end date to ESSER funds. Now, depending on the district in which you're working, that has varying level of impact. There are some districts who are taking a significant hit, and there are others who were less reliant on ESSER funds. And even within systems, I was talking to a central office leader in a very large urban district who said he was very intentional about not dipping too much into those funds as he was thinking about sustainability. But what we weren't talking about a year ago, right, are the cuts to title funding that we're now seeing in the headlines and that we know our current presidential administration is talking about and pushing for. We also know that there are economic shifts that are negatively impacting state budgets. And so I want to highlight and recognize that our audience comes from different towns, cities, states. And so your budget challenges are very unique to where you are and based on your funding formulas. But you're going to hear from three panelists who represent different areas and regions of the country, share lessons learned across their careers in navigating complex budget decision making. And then finally, another economic factor is inflation in front of us, right? So the cost to do some of the work, the cost to provide certain items and to get certain items is higher at this point in time. And so what we really hope to achieve in this conversation is to learn about frameworks, leadership philosophy around budget planning, as well as hopefully saving some of our audience members from hard lessons learned because our panelists have been kind enough to donate their time and perspective to share some wisdom. Lily, I'm curious, as you think about the funding cliff and you think about what you're seeing out in the field in school systems, what's standing out to you about the current budget environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, going back to previously what you said about the leadership programs and things that we have is the day and the job of the new building leader and the superintendent are much different than they were 5 years ago. We're having to deal with these issues, and a lot of them are the depleting funds, of course, and we have the ESSER cliff that's coming up. But it's actually having to be smarter when resources are scarce. Leadership really does matter when it happens that way, and it's important for us to really kind of take a look at and really make those hard decisions. Right? That's the burden of leadership that we come into, and really just trying to make sure that what we're seeing out there, our folks are prepared for. So through our National Principals Leadership Academy and our Superintendent Leadership Academy, we're teaching them the skills to actually not only just lead districts, because it's harder nowadays to get those jobs and keep those jobs, so that they can actually make those financial decisions that they need to drive their districts out there. So it's tough. It is tough out there no matter where we go. The headlines out there are very scary. I'm excited about the panelists that we actually have to walk us through some of those decisions and really what's really helped them be successful, right? So we're facing a lot of these deficits out there, and it's a critical time for us to go ahead and make really good decisions, and we need to rely on the wisdom of each other. These partnerships that we have, we need to form those also across the different districts. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting time, an amazing time, but together we can do it.
A little more context, and then I think we should get our panelists diving in. So I think what you highlighted that the job today is different from the job 5 years ago, whether we're talking about building leadership or district leadership. And I think that the three things that we've touched upon to just emphasize are the shifts in enrollment. We have some school systems that we're working in where they're experiencing rapid increase. And then we also have some systems that are experiencing rapid decline, understanding that when your funding is tied to the number of students you have, that really can swing things for you, right? And granted, I do want to note that having rapid increase in student enrollment still presents challenges, right? I like to call those good problems to have, but they're problems nonetheless. And so I don't want to overlook that because I think that's really important as we enter this conversation, honoring the fact that the problems that you're facing may be different from some of the problems that our panelists are going to share, but hopefully finding common themes and strategies on how you navigate these tough decisions, right? So when I'm out in the field, I've heard a lot of district leaders talk about concerns about having to reduce their number of instructional coaches, but the work still needs to be done, right? Or asking themselves, how do I preserve my instructional coaches? What can I do without? And what can I scale back on? Understanding that it isn't one size fits all. So maybe we have to scale back in certain schools, but not at scale across the system. And so really digging into the nuance and getting down into the granular detail of how to make the most of every dollar while supporting our students and teachers, right? And the final thought that I'll share as we introduce our panelists is this particular framing around leading with compassion and supporting your community was prompted because as a former classroom teacher myself, you're in systems every day. We put so much corazon into it, right? It's heart. We show up and work in schools because we care about students and we care about teachers and we believe that we can make a difference and we can drive student outcomes. And with that much passion and commitment and mission comes big feelings. And when you're in a leadership position, you have to be able to keep your head above that and keep everyone focused on your why and bring everyone along, even when you've made an unpopular decision. And that's why I think we've chosen the right group of panelists to have this conversation as we think about strong leadership, compassionate leadership through difficult budget climates. So with that, I would love to bring our panelists into the room. I'm so thrilled to have the three of them here with us. We will start with Dr. Martha Salazar Zamata. She's the superintendent at Tomball Independent School District in Texas. She's going to give you a little bit of the lay of the land of the district in which she's serving and the perspective that she's going to bring this morning.
Okay, well, good morning, and thank you so much for the opportunity to serve on this panel with these other two presenters that I know their body of work and look forward to hearing from them as well. I am the proud superintendent of the Tomball Independent School District, which is in Tomball, Texas, and I also serve as an ALAS board member, and I'm very proud of that as well. So thank you to our executive director, Uli Navarrete, who asked both Gustavo and myself to be on this discussion today. Tomball ISD is I heard you talking about just a minute ago, the challenges and the blessings that come with fast growth. So Tomball ISD is an extremely fast growing district. When I arrived in the district 10 years ago, we had approximately 10,000 students. We now have almost 24,000 students. So if you do the math, we've more than doubled in a short period of time. And it certainly touches on many of the things we'll be talking about today. I started in the superintendency over 25 years ago in my hometown, which also was a blessing, but came with its own challenges when you're from that hometown. But a lot has changed in the 25 years. Somebody just made the comment, so much has changed in 5 years. As I think of years incrementally in 5-year periods, it's sometimes now I see huge changes happen even within, lesser than 2 to 3 years. And so whether you are a leader on a campus level or leading a district or a department, whatever it is, leadership looks very different today than it even did just a few short years ago. And so I think this topic is very important. But what I love is that we're going to talk about limited dollars, which we're all facing, but how we continue to do that and lead with passion and heart. I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes, and that is, it takes a special person who can take care of business while also taking care of hearts. And I think that's what leaders of today have to remember. We are taking care of business, but it's all for nothing if we don't remember we're also taking care of hearts, not just our staff, not just our students, but our entire community. I'll leave you with that.
I love that. We also are joined by Dr. Gustavo Valderas, superintendent at Beaverton School District, Oregon. Gustavo, thank you so much for being here with us. Can you share with the audience a little bit about the perspective you're bringing today?
Yes, I've been an educator for 35 years. So thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be with my two colleagues. Been an educator for 35 years and been a superintendent for 15 years, actually 14 years, almost 15, in 3 Western states, in Oregon, Washington, and California, and am currently the AASA president for this year, and immediate past president of ALAS, where I serve with Uli, and with Magda, and many others. So my experience comes from being 35 years in business and having seen reductions for most of my career. So it's one of those things, being a classroom teacher to a district administrator to a superintendent in multiple districts in 3 different states. I think that's the perspective that I bring to this conversation.
You have me thinking already about a question that we should explore, which is hearkening back to when we were all in the classroom and how these budget cuts are making our teachers anxious, specifically in the view they have, right? Because there's the micro and the macro view. Before we dive into that, I am also excited to welcome Nancy Brightwell, Chief of Recruitment, Retention, and Talent Development at Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, North Carolina. Nancy, welcome.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to be here and with my esteemed colleagues this morning as well. Couldn't be more excited to talk about and share and learn from you all our current wisdom related to how we manage. And I love what you said, Martha, about making smart fiscal decisions while keeping the best interest in the heart of the people who do the serious work of educating our young children at the center of the work that we do and how we do it. I've been in Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools as well for 34 years and have served. I was a principal at all levels for 20 years, and then was an area superintendent for 4 years, CAO for 3 years, and currently leading our recruitment, retention, and talent development as a member of our cabinet.
Well, let's dive in and start with our first question. So what I would like to do is start with Gustavo. And I'm curious, as you think about what it is to lead with compassion in a difficult budget climate, what does that mean to you?
Leading with compassion. And I think it's always doing what's right for our kids. It's keeping the center our students and what our community expects us to do. It's really critical to keep our classrooms intact and have minimal disruption that we can based on initiatives that we have. Again, I think all 3 of us on this screen that are superintendents or work at the district office have experience in terms of multiple years of having to do this. So it's how do we keep the instructional program intact for our kids? And I'm talking all kids, because we're becoming more and more diverse. I'm in Beaverton, Oregon, 38,000 kids. 60% of my kids are kids from ethnically diverse backgrounds, 110 languages, and was in Beaverton 20 years ago, where it was 15% kids of color. So it's just very diverse perspective now they have to work with, and making sure that we take care of the people that are taking care of our kids as well. So that's our faculty. We in Beaverton, we're 90% people, where the national average is much less than that. So we all have difficult decisions to make in the out year in terms of what to do, because again, these are people's livelihoods. And the compassion piece is how we are very intentional in having that discussion with not just our staff, but our community, to the rationale to why things are happening. I know you talked with Uli about the ESSER dollars. What else is happening in the near future? I know we're going to be talking about possible federal reductions. So how do we keep our instructional program intact? Because again, these are our people that live in our communities, that take care of our youngest here in our schools. So just making sure we keep the focus, again, on core instruction, but also if you're going to reduce anything or any program, any initiative, or go through a reduction of force, how do you do it in the most compassionate possible manner you can to make sure that we are, again, treat people with respect as needed, and making sure that we're doing what's best for our overall, for for our district to stay balanced, which is something that's our core.
Follow-up question. Marta, I would love to have you and Nancy follow up after I put Gustavo on the spot. So, when you talk about shifting demographics and changes among your student population, oftentimes that means you need to do something new, right? And I have sat with so many different district leaders who struggle and shy away from adding something because they're making cuts and they're worried about the optics of that. Marta, you must be faced with this as you're dealing with rising student enrollment, right? We have to add while subtracting. Do you have a specific anecdote or time that you can recall where you really had to drive that conversation to get to that why? Because it's really hard, right? When you're cutting, but also spending.
I actually do have something that we recently did this past year, which I will tell you, it was a prayerful moment in my career because we did a total district zone reset because of the growth. And that meant that almost every family could potentially be impacted and go to a different school. And when you are starting off as a one high school community, and then you become two, and then you become three, and then you become four, you would think it would get a bit easier, but it doesn't. And people are very connected to where their older children went to school and where their younger children will graduate. And there's a lot of emotions that you have to remember are important. What I remind people is that in the community, in our district, it really does not matter which school you go to. You will go to an incredibly inviting and high academic school. So that's just a reminder to the community. But the district zone reset made me think about a lot of things, and it was a good reflection on where we are as a community. I will piggyback on what Gustavo mentioned because I was nodding my head the entire time as far as Tomball ISD, Tomball, Texas did not look like we did 10 years ago. We are now majority minority. We now have 86 languages spoken. So also the influx of diversity and a lot of different individuals that we want to make sure that we're meeting their needs and they understand what we're providing and what we're not and why. So whether it's a district zone reset, which we did an overabundance, if you can ever imagine that, in communication, whatever it is we're dealing with, when you're dealing with dollars and cents, whether it's to your classroom teachers, whether it's to your families, whether it's to your administrators, I think as long as people fully understand where you are and what you're doing and what's driving the decisions, they still may not like it. And likely they won't if it means budgets are decreased, but they will better understand and most likely better support the decision. We're a priority-based budget district, and we've done that for years. And in the past, even when money wasn't as much of a concern, it's always been a concern, but not to the degree that we're at now, I involved people, or so I thought. Now I involve many more people because I think they need to see why these cuts were made, when these cuts will be made, how, and when we look at what is the return on investment in programs, when we look at bringing back the heart to that discussion, the heart of what we do is curriculum and instruction. And so I'm going to make sure that we have what we need. To Gustavo's point, all the programs that our students need in a variety and a wide array of different programs. And where things need to be cut or slightly reduced, there's an explanation as to why. Because I don't see a lot of big changes coming our way. I've written a deficit budget for the last 2 years. Not very proud of that. First time in my career. But it is where we are. And the board has been fully aware of it and walked this walk with me. But so have my staff and community members. So I would say communication in any case is the key right now to staying effective.
Can you elaborate? You said you used to involve people and now you involve many more. What does that shift look like? What do you mean? So what does that look like for those sitting out there thinking?
Yeah, so I'm glad that you touched on that or caught that I said that, because in my mind, we were involving people. We were sharing some decisions that were made and why almost after the fact. Like, this is where we are, but they were still getting the money. So it wasn't as if, at the end of the day, I'm not sure they were as concerned as long as they got the money. Now I see, even in the end, if we're able to see an influx of cash someday and things aren't so dire as they are right now in Texas and other parts of the nation, I love the fact that so many more touch points are in place. It's really made me reflective on what I thought was a much more involved priority-based budget that perhaps wasn't. Maybe I was informing people more than I was including them. Now they're included because um, everyone's going to eat, but you're going to eat a whole lot less. And you need to understand that these are the reasons why. These are the programs that are under review. These are the programs that have to be, if a program has to be reduced, then there's a long or increase. Either way, there's a long discussion about that. And we look at what will the end effect mean to us, because we're leaders. We have to be future driven. We have to think about, okay, if I take back this, what's going to happen to that? Whether it's my dual language program, whether it's in my gifted and talented program. Whatever it might be. But that's what I meant. In my mind as a leader, I was more inclusive. And as I reflect now that I am really including everybody, it wasn't as inclusive as I fancied myself to be.
Insights 2020.
Absolutely.
Nancy, I see you leaning forward. I'm curious as you think about, that bringing people along. And if I can tweak, I don't know if you can touch upon this, but as you think about how the cabinet gets lockstep and supports the superintendent in budget decision making, what has your experience been and what anecdotes do you want to share with our audience?
Sure. I would say that we've really, I think, improved our processes as a cabinet and as an engagement group of leaders in our district. So I think first and foremost, we really focus on doing a few things really, really well, and on ensuring that well ahead of the budget season, and Martha kind of touched on this a bit in her comments, the importance of having ongoing systems and structures where you're connecting with stakeholders to get their feedback and to share what's currently in play in terms of your strategies, your investments, key levers related to the goals that you're going after, and what is that return on investment. And so we have, over the years as a cabinet, built up and strengthened our systems and structures for bringing together either monthly or quarterly all of our stakeholders. And then as we approach that budget season, we go out and do many, many, many engagement sessions that are open to all stakeholders. And that's that opportunity to ensure that all voices that want to be heard are heard, that we're hearing what's really important to them, and then making sure that we're taking notes on what we're hearing, and that when we go back out to communicate, or when we go to that next venue to say, here's what we heard, that we're able to connect the dots and say, for example, we heard that middle career educators are feeling that they're forgotten and not invested in, and they want to know specifically what our district is doing to strengthen that, so that we keep our strongest educators who have strong experience invested in our district. And so when we hear feedback such as that, it's really important for us to then report back out. We heard you, we responded, and here's the shift in our priority that we're making based on that feedback.
So I have few follow-up questions. The first one for you, Nancy, when we think about professional learning, it's costly, whether it's having people come in, right, or programming or sending people out. How, when you think about needing to invest in onboarding, which we know is critical, but then you hear your mid-career folks saying, we need attention as well. What do the trade-offs look like for you all? How do you as a cabinet make the trade-off, but then how do you communicate that trade-off, understanding not everyone's going to be happy?
Sure. Well, we tie every decision that we make to one of our 4 pillars: academic, people, operational, or engagement excellence. And our budget is, in fact, built, 78% of our budget is built on people. And so we have leaned really boldly into a theory of action that really has driven our annual plan and which is tied to our 5-year strategic plan. And our theory of action really pushes on to the degree that we have highly qualified, well-prepared, trained, and supported educators leading instruction in the classroom, we will be able to achieve our academic goals. And in fact, it is the only way that we will be able to achieve our academic goals. And so then when we think about what does it take, currently we have 19,000 employees, about 9,000 teachers. We really began to think about who are the people who influence and pour into our educators. We currently have probably 40 to 45% of our incoming new to Charlotte-Mecklenburg teachers are alternatively licensed or second career people. So onboarding and investing in that kind of workforce is very different than it looked 5-10 years ago. So our theory of action really looks at and we've aligned our investments. So for example, we moved from a weighted student staffing, and we looked at what are principals trading positions for. And primarily it was to get instructional coaches. And so we said, well, if they're having to trade for that, let's take that away. So we took away something, that addition by subtraction. We took away something that had been really preserved and revered in our district. But what we gave every school was a master teacher position for literacy and math, which our academic goals are aligned to. And so thinking about then who are the specialists who help to upskill and train all of those people who are now able to do that job embedded daily professional development and capacity building at the school level. So that basically is our theory of action that we, again, have built our budget and priorities around. Sorry, that was a bit of a long answer.
No, that was fantastic. I think that level of detail was incredibly helpful for the audience as we think about the taking away and the adding. Gustavo, you had made a comment earlier about scaling back, though. It's not always about taking away, right? Can you share with the audience when it isn't about a full cut and it's about scaling back, how do you thread that needle around your why in clarity? So Nancy gave that clear example on taking the coaches and adding master teachers. I'm curious from your view, when you think about scaling back, how do you navigate those conversations in a system?
Yeah, so I start off with the most impactful programs that we have for the neediest learners. So we have a student allocation model that's built on an equity-based model on staffing that has certain specific variables in it, including students that are second language students, are multilingual learners, are kids that are identified in special programs, for example, and there's a weight to it. I think many districts do the same thing. So for us, it's looking at how we do that, and we minimize the reductions in those schools. So there's a formula we use, and it comes out with a percentage, and those are the schools that have the most impact. And it's beyond our Title I funding. It's on top of our Title I funding that we have for our students. So it's distributed across our entire district. You know, we're much smaller than Charlotte-Mecklenburg. We have 50 plus campuses, but we scale it down. So it's just making sure that we're impacting the areas most in need. And that's where we reduce the last. So we, because again, these are kids that are the most impacted students that we have in our district. So and we communicate that out and very transparent about how we do the process. We involve our association partners in that process as well to make sure that they're aware of it. And again, it's something that people are now used to how we do business here.
That's incredibly helpful. I'm curious, I was in a session maybe 7 months ago with a group of leaders, and we were using the framework start, stop, continue, because we were looking at dollar investment at schools and student outcomes. And it was a really difficult, emotionally driven conversation, right? Of our kids have high need, we must give them more. how do you create the space with your classroom teacher specifically, knowing that, Nancy, you highlighted, we need to retain them, right? And we want them to know that we believe in their ability to support our kids. But at that school level, how are you creating space for that vulnerability that maybe what's happening in our classrooms isn't serving us as well? I think I see leaders struggle in that area of when we're really talking about maybe whether it's a curriculum or a specific school site, when those emotions are high and you want to retain your leaders and your staff. What has that looked like in the room? So I know you're going out into the communities. Do you have certain questions or tools that you've used to have that conversation that you could share a little more detail about? So I'm thinking about our new leaders who haven't driven that conversation yet.
Yeah, I do think it is critically important that our teachers feel that they have voice in the decisions that are made. And around curriculum and instruction, oftentimes when we go and, for example, my team leads roundtable discussions with teacher groups all the time. And oftentimes it's around, we've started XYZ initiatives to better support quality instruction or address some subgroup gaps that we've had. How's that working for you? Where are the challenges? We intended for it to accomplish this. Is it doing that for you? I can give one example of something that came out after the pandemic, where we had moved all of our instructional resources and our curriculum resources onto our learning management system. And recognizing that coming out of the pandemic, many of our marginalized students suffered the biggest learning disparities. And so as we came out of that, we needed to ensure that those instructional resources, those curriculum resources had appropriate on-ramps for different types of learners. So we built all of those resources into the curriculum and thought we were doing a great thing. But when we went out and engaged teachers, they said it's too much to plan a week's worth of instruction. I have to go in and out of 4 different portals to plan for all the kids that are sitting in front of me, and it's not practical. So we went back to work. We engaged teachers in helping to redesign our curriculum resources so that it was more user-friendly. And so, again, I think it's when you put something in play, you make budget investments, it's ensuring that you're providing those frequent opportunities to hear from them what's working and what's not working, and that you stay committed to ensuring that it's helping you to get that return on investment by making sure that it's working for the end user.
One of the things that I love about that and that I'm hearing as a takeaway is regular communication. So not waiting to have the budget conversations, but if you're regularly collecting that feedback and responding to it, we can use that to inform those months where we're really digging into our budget planning. I've heard all of you talk about adding innovation, something new. When you think about this moment in time, because I am passionate about helping us stay above the fray and not get pulled into the stress and worry, where are you hopeful about innovation despite the budget challenges in front of you?
I'll jump into this one because I love that word innovation. Several years ago, we did a full curriculum audit. It was a deficit audit, and we looked at areas that were concerning. And as part of our strategic plan for the last several years, we've embedded dollars and time and hired people with the intention of continuing to improve this curriculum that has served us very, very well over the last several years. But part of the last 2 5-year strategic plans have been looking at just that word innovation and where we are and where we need to be. And I love that actually in a partnership with AASA, I was able to go to Arizona State University. Gustavo was also one of the individuals that was able to go on that trip. And it wasn't so much the visit itself, it was a reminder that so much is already happening and we need to continue to stay abreast of what our students are living every day. And what I was reminded of was not just virtual reality, which we had been doing quite a bit already with, but artificial intelligence. So went back, continued the conversation with Arizona State University, worked on some partnerships at our Tomball Innovation Center, which is an innovative hub site there with CTE and our early college and our PTEX and many other opportunities for kids. But what we've also added there, most recently had the Tomball Tomball Roundtable AI Symposium, as bringing in multiple districts and vendors to help us look to the future, and not in a way of concern. Obviously, we have to be concerned, we have to be cautious, but in a way of what more can we do to help our teachers, to help our students? Because we really are utilizing AI each and every day. There's just this level of fear of somewhat the unknown. And we find ourselves yet again in a situation where some of our students know far more than even we do, such as in this case. And so, together with the right policies in place and obviously with board support, we can build a better tomorrow with limited dollars, perhaps, because there are things you can do with so much accessibility and so much easier and so much faster utilizing the many tools that AI provides. And so I would say that's the first thing that came to mind when you said that word, because I love that word, innovation.
Yeah. Layla, can I jump in real quick? Actually, I mean, these are some just great topics and great conversation pieces that we're having. I mean, I love it. And what I'm hearing as we're going through this, first and foremost, is heart. You know, we are actually in the people business, regardless of where we're at and where we sit. We're in the people business, and the people starts with their kids, right? It's about Miata, making it about them always. And I'll continue to go ahead and say that. It's about our people. It's about leading with that transparency that we have, right? It's about making sure that they have the tools and resources. And I really love what Martha said earlier. Everyone's going to eat, but you might eat a little less and everything out that way. Because it's true. You know, we need to really focus on those programs that we have and everything that we've got there. And we need to improve that communication, because many times we do think we're being transparent, but we're not involving everyone that should be at the table. So we need to go ahead and do those. One of the things that I like to focus on, and this will kind of like sum up just the thoughts that Martha was just talking about also, is it's what I call pause, play, or eject. And it's basically we're either going to pause certain programs that aren't working so well for us. We're going to play and continue to play those things that we're doing great. Or we're going to eject, and we're just going to basically pull the cord and basically say we cannot do those because they just continue to cost us money. And so we really have to make those decisions, one, while we involve everyone and we surround ourselves with people that might know better than we do. And basically that would help us make those hard decisions, because when you're talking about people's money, feelings get hurt. People kind of get in there. And so we need to find ways to innovate. And so that was a great piece to go ahead and talk about, Martha, when you're talking about the innovation and using of tools, because there's many things that we can actually do and we can implement to automate some of the things that we do, so that we can help ourselves be a little bit more effective, especially as we're losing enrollment, as we're losing teachers out there. We need to do more out there with less, and really just kind of making sure that we're cognizant and we keep that heart that we have, not only to our children, but to our employees out there as well. So just kudos to you guys for everything that you're doing out there.
Gustavo, can I ask you one final question before I totally close us out? This is something that I've heard in passing in conversations with you, but right now you all are faced with needing to leverage technology as you're thinking about trade-offs and maybe how to effectively implement and scale without as much people heavy costs, one, and two, you also need future ready students, and there's a lot of vendors and products and services out there to support you. What advice do you have for our newer leaders as they're trying to make sure that they have cutting edge resources, programs, opportunities, while also navigating these emotionally driven conversations? Because I think I keep hearing, should I upgrade my Chromebooks? Where do I put my dollars? How do I think about this and make sure I'm delivering quality education? What parting words of wisdom do you have?
So I would start off that no one's ever going to take the place of our classroom teachers. no one's ever going to take the place of our classroom teachers. We need our classroom teachers. We need the very, very best to be able to recruit and retain our classroom teachers and then train them as best we can with all the resources we have. I think right now, since ESSER, we got flooded with technology. I think the concern I have down the road, and Martha's been a superintendent 10 years longer than I have, so she has a much more experience with regards to budgets and refresh cycles, is making sure we have the resources to continue to refresh what we just recently purchased. I think that's a concern that people aren't thinking about yet. Maybe they are a little bit because, technology only lasts 5-6 years. We refresh every 3 here, but I think that's a concern that I have right now is, hey, who's going to pay for the next generation of technology that we have that we just purchased that people got accustomed to? So I guess what I would say is continue to explore what we can to support our kids. I've said this often, is I believe in schools without walls. The kids with the technology that we have, the kids should be able to take whatever course they want in whatever high school they're at, whatever middle school they're at, as long as they're connected and there's an adult in that classroom to be able to share space, maybe at a different high school through, video and so forth. So I think that's going to take care of some of the employment needs. But in the end, the worry I have right now, Lila, really is the refresh, is being really planful about how we're going to replace what we have, because people get used to the technology that we do have. And it's a great tool. But again, with decreased budgets, something has to give. And I think but the word I would have is just continue to, again, be future thinking and leverage other resources you have. There's a lot of districts like Tomball ISD under Mata's leadership has done phenomenal work. There's a lot of models out there to look at. I copycat everything. So whatever I do, I copycat what other people are doing and try to infuse it here, because there's people out there doing phenomenal work.
Thank you. Yes. And that was the reason we brought you all together, right? Because particularly for our newer leaders who are navigating such a complex moment in time, hearing from you all some lessons learned. I so appreciate the wisdom and time and humility and vulnerability that you brought to this conversation. I know our audience, both live and those who listen to the recording, are going to appreciate you sharing these vulnerable moments, as well as guidance on how to get through the coming months and years. Gustavo, you really have me thinking about future focused budget planning. It's not just about future ready students, right? Future focused budget planning. And I will say I want to double down on that, because in the work that we do, I've been in a lot of systems where something starts as a pilot and then it's time to scale, and there wasn't enough coordination with finance, or there wasn't enough coordination with other departments for that scaling. And so if there's a key takeaway for me, it's going to be, what are you doing in your future ready budget planning to make sure that we're going to be able to take this to scale when it's time? So thank you all so much. We want to share a few resources as we part ways, just to support our audience. So we have a community engagement guide that we encourage you to take a look at. I think, Marta, every leader, whether you're in a school system or the private sector, I think had a moment, right, where they thought, man, I was doing a really good job. And then a moment, I could have done that better. So I really appreciated that anecdote of, I thought I was engaging everybody, because I'm not sure there's a leader out there who would say they didn't have a moment like that at some time, thinking they were bringing everyone along. So thank you so much for being willing to share that moment in your leadership journey. This guide is intended to support folks as you're thinking about what are the different strategies and methods I can use to make sure I'm bringing everyone along. And then finally, I would really love to highlight the podcast that we at Education Elements just launched, the K-12 Change Equation. This is another project where Alas is going to be joining us for special episodes. Yuli is going to serve as a special co-host with me next week. I'm very excited. And today we just launched an episode with one of our Alas members, Dr. Adrian Bustillos, and he talks about the power of partnerships, both internal and external. And I think what we heard today is partnerships are important. Your partners aren't going away through this, right? You have to think strategically about which partners you keep on and walk alongside you during this hard time. And I think we heard from Nancy the importance of partners within, right? Our cabinet being lockstep, going out into the community, supporting our superintendents as we get the word out and gather feedback, because you can't do it alone as a leader. So with that, we wish everyone a great start to their day in Pacific time. And for those on East Coast time, we're hoping that you get to have lunch today and you're not going into a meeting. So thank you again to our panelists. We'll see you in our next session.